everybody. We are back for quarter 3, season 5. Man, it has been a while. I miss you guys, but we are back after a short hiatus. Super excited. I can't believe we are on the back end kind of season 5. And we are going to hit 200 episodes later on this year. So I think in November is going to be our 200th episode, and definitely still formulating what we're going to be doing there. But man, I definitely have missed all of you, and a little bit rusty, so I'm trying to dust just kind of brush off the dust a little there. You know the drill. Hop into the comments, say, hey, where you tuning in from, while I do a little housekeeping. But, I always like to give my guests the props, or my viewers the props that they deserve. So make sure you hop into the comments, say, hey, where you tuning in from, and all that good stuff, while, I make sure that we are broadcasting there. Mr. Dewan, I appreciate you, as always, tuning in. Let me move you up here. These comments up here, there. But appreciate you, brother, tuning in. As always, like I said, we are coming down the back half of season 5, and I can't think of a better guest to kick that off with. And so looking forward to sitting down and having a conversation with her. But you know the drill. We are here each and every Saturday afternoon. My name is Don Terrell. I want to thank you for joining me for another great episode of The Color of Motion. Like I said, we're here each and every Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, live on the YouTube channel, LinkedIn, the Facebook group, and the website for the show. But I always encourage everybody to hop on over to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification, get plugged in so you get notified of when content goes up on the channel, when the show goes live, and all that good stuff, for sure. Also, want to thank, sponsor for today's show, DG Graphics, for always sponsoring our episodes. They help us look good. They do all the graphics, overlays, and animations and everything. And if you're a business and a brand looking to level up your brand design, you definitely want to reach out to them. So thank you, DG Graphics, for always sponsoring the show. Like I said, we got a lot of great things planned for this year. Like I said, the 200th celebration. December, we got GainsCon Film Festival, so we're going to be having Barry back on to talk about that as it gets closer. So, like I said, a lot of fun stuff for The Color of Motion coming up. With that, like I said, I think I'm super excited about this. I think we can kind of get started and get the show on the road. What do you say? Hey? And wow, we are back. We are back. Tried to do a little something different on the intro. I'm still playing around with stuff. But we are back. And like I said, super, super excited about today's guest. Let me throw you in here there, Mr. Dewan. Cool, halftone, comic effect. Yeah, I was trying a little something different, have a little fun on the intro. But like I said, super, super excited about my next guest. Born in Delaware and grew up in Lancaster, California, in the Mojave Desert, just outside of LA County. She loved cartoons and comics her entire life, but first learned about animation as a job from MC Hammer's short. I think a lot of people don't remember. I think he had a Saturday morning cartoon show as well. That might be where she's talking about, but I know he used to have a little stint there when he was hot. But since she was part of the gifted program in elementary school, she was pressured to join the robotics club in middle school and took aerospace engineering, advanced math, and science classes even through high school, and only drew and wrote as a hobby. But as she was applying to colleges, she ended up deciding to go for animation instead. She got into an art program in upstate New York that didn't require a portfolio. She struggled a lot, like most initial students do, and beefed with her professors wanting her art to conform. She ended up pursuing her master's at UCLA to build her confidence again and, as an artist, show her professors how it's done. She fell in love with teaching film and art, but also freelancing and completing her own projects. Currently, she works at 5 middle schools as a media instructor for podcasts. And we were talking earlier, and pretty much a lot of other creative stuff as well. She advises her friends on freelance gigs, and she's currently working on some of her own projects, which is going to be cool to share because she shared a little bit beforehand as well. Everybody, please help me welcome my very special guest and friend, Miss Taylor Goethe.
Hey.
Miss Taylor! Welcome. Oh man, super excited to have you on the show, Taylor, and I can't thank you enough for again kicking off this third quarter and coming on and sharing your wisdom. Like I said, we had a lot of fun, before the show, talking about a lot of different stuff. But I want to know initially, kind of what was that thing that kind of got sparked it for you early on before the science and the robotics and things like that. What was the cartoons and animations and things that kind of sparked your creative side artistically?
See, I guess I learned animation was a job through the MC Hammer cartoon, but I was a Saturday cartoon baby. I know I was born like the tail end of the 90s, but I had older siblings because I'm the
Yeah.
youngest. So I end up watching all the reruns, Samurai Jack, Powerpuff Girls. I love the anime series Batman, obviously.
Batman. You see, she got her Batman shirt. We're gonna have to do something about that. We're gonna get her a
Oh,
color of
I
motion.
got them
Yeah,
up here too. See,
yeah.
like okay.
Okay. So are you a DC or Marvel or just either one?
I mean, DC's my favorite because I like a lot of the heroes there, but
Okay.
I do also love Marvel. But yes, growing up with like the Justice League, the animated series, and Superman and Batman and Bionicles and like all of those
Yeah.
all of those things really encouraged me to do art. I used to have like the little pamphlets in the Sonic the Hedgehog game and try to draw Sonic and Amy and get it taken away from my teachers because they didn't like me drawing in class.
Well, so okay, so you talked about feeling the pressure, which I don't know. I guess every creative may get it at some point from their parents, wanting they're not kind of getting the creative, or they're wanting them to do kind of have a fallback position.
On
As you
TV
see her
Pylon.
mom, as you see her mom stroll by, uh, you see a lot of parents. I was telling her what happens live happens live. We just got to roll with it. But you talked about a little earlier just the pressure of going kind of the educational route. Um, I mean, at some point, you make that decision. You have to make that decision. But do you feel like now that kind of helped you, or how has it helped you on the creative side of your art and your creativity? Just the really technical things that you did.
Um, I'm gonna try to phrase this in a way that doesn't sound negative, but I guess it helped me deal with rejection because when I was in robotics, I did that from fifth grade through middle school and in halfway through high school until we went to the World Championships based on a essay I wrote because we our robot malfunctioned and we didn't win a tournament like we usually do to get the world. but I wrote an essay, and that's actually what the chairman's award is, what actually got us world championships. And they didn't bring me with them to the world championship tournament.
Mm.
And I was like the only dark skinned black girl on the team, only one that was in like the mechanical sub team. So I was
Yeah.
working with the robot directly. So I was just there with a bunch of guys, primarily white guys. And I just didn't feel included. And I used to love math and robotics, don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I did get pressured a bit by teachers and other influences, but it was also that I enjoyed math and I enjoyed engineering genuinely.
Yeah.
And I remember when I told my coach why I'm quitting the team and I'm quitting Air Force Junior RTC and I'm quitting all these engineering classes in aerospace. I'm like, I said, I just lost my passion.
Mm. Mm.
And so I went to art school. I had this goal that regardless of what happens, no one's going to steal my passion for art the way they stole my passion for robotics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not kind of in the space myself, but I would think now there are a lot more like robotics groups and that are like black, you know, African American or kind of targeted for younger to get younger African Americans interested. And I know there was a guy. He was on. He was, I think, a guest third season. He at the time worked for Microsoft, but he was, you know, really doing a lot of training as far as like a mixed reality and teaching, going into schools, teaching younger. Do you think now, you know, it'd be a little more interesting for you getting
Mm-hmm.
into say more of a targeted group that obviously had more people that looked like you within say uh, robotics group.
Um, Funny enough, in the summer camp I'm teaching at right now, I'm not just teaching art, I'm also teaching robotics.
Yeah,
So I kind of got that little bit of myself back because I have primarily Black Latino students, and they get to see me and the other Black woman instructor teaching and coding robots and how to use it. And it's also mostly female teachers, so they see women with all these math and engineering classes on top of the arts and the crafts and the sports.
yeah,
So going into teaching education really brought me, it's really healed a little bit of my childhood because I didn't have anyone looking like me as a mentor.
yeah,
And I feel happy that even if students don't take away the crafts and art projects I do with them, they might take away the robotics and coding that I'm doing with
yeah,
them now.
yeah. And we were talking about, you know, beforehand, just the fact that when, like I said, I was coming through the school, you know, at my age, there were a lot of extracurricular, you know, activities that kids could get into, whatever it may be, whether it was creative or mechanical or what it might be, computers, but just that. But you know, they ended up taking it out of schools and really making it hard. But it, you know, it's good to see that, like I said, there are these outlets that, you know, kids can get into that really expose them. And I think that's the main thing is having these places and spaces that expose kids to all these things that they probably normally wouldn't get exposed to. Do
Yeah,
you
I
start to
agree.
see more? Do you start to see? Are you starting to see more kids get interested in kind of the program as you're doing this each year?
In like in stressing like arts and STEM.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids don't realize that they can start learning things now.
Hmm.
Um, One of the things I tell my students when they see me draw is like, "Why do you draw so good? I don't draw like that." And I'm like, "I've been drawing for 20 years," you
Yeah.
know. And I always tell them it's not a talent. It's what makes something your talent is like a pursued interest and a pursued skill over a long period of
Period of
time, right?
time. Yeah.
And I want
It's,
them to be encouraged to if they like math and they like building stuff and they like robots and they like art or podcasts or film and they're not good at it in the beginning, to
mhm.
understand that you can eventually get there. Mostly because it's just you're a kid and you're trying something out. And I think, as I said, I learned the feeling of rejection early, I also learned the feeling of failure really early too. And like feeling that failure over time and being okay with trying anyway is mostly the lesson I want students to feel is like it's okay to not be good at something when you first started.
Yeah.
Did that answer
Yeah.
your question?
No, it did. It did. Sure. And I want to make sure that I get some comments in here because we're getting some. Mr. DeMille. Okay, that's kind of big there. Let me size that down and move it over here. Happy Saturday. Appreciate you showing up there, Mr. DeMille, as well. I know Ms. Taylor appreciates that. We're kind of rolling with it. Taylor, she lives at home. And so, like I said, we're hearing her mom fix something in the kitchen.
Yeah, mommy totally hear you in the kitchen. And no, mine's okay, cook.
Yeah, no worries. Like I said, we roll with it here on The Color of Motion. We have to. And like I said, I've always said what happens live, is live, and it kind of adds to the flavor of it. Mr. Louis, I appreciate that. Woo, Taylor. Appreciate you. Amazing work. And we're going to see some of her work for sure. And like I said, she's obviously now, experimenting with a lot of different things. Do you think that's another thing that kind of, played into, I guess, your struggles with your instructor? Whereas that you're kind of the artist that likes to dabble and do a lot of different things and kind of not get locked into, say, doing one thing type of thing? Or
Yeah. I think it's like I like to dabble and I don't like to be in the norm of things. And like you would think as an artist you always want to be in the norm or everyone's different and unique obviously, but
yeah,
it's I would always want to say, hey, this assignment feels very limited and restrictive. Can we try something new? Can I
yeah,
pick something else? Can I do something um, that is just no less rigid and rigid?
yeah,
And one thing that's interesting about I learned about art school, particularly for animation, is that they do kind of want to gear you towards working for a big studio and being a worker.
yeah,
So sometimes your professors may be trying to mold you more than you would initially expect. And I don't like being molded. I like to do
yeah.
what I want, basically. So,
Well, do you
and
think that plays well, especially in this time, molding you for studio work? And really, I know a lot of you. Most of the time, they spend this kind of journeyman life, where they're going from a project may last a few months, and then they're looking to move to the next thing. That kind of working at a studio. Do you think that even is the thing now, that a lot of schools aren't preparing students for now of the climate that we're in today and
yeah,
dealing with?
studio work isn't what it used to be. Like you can expect to work for a studio for 20 years, then it's like 10, then it's like 5, then 2. Now people are lucky to get a year-long contract. A lot of these studios are going for 6 to 3 months if they're hiring at all, because a lot of them are trying to see how many artists they can replace with AI. I don't personally think it's going to be done very well, but
Yeah,
they'll try. Like
yeah,
there's no loyalty when it comes to big industry and big money. And I'm kind of glad there were parts of me that was trying to gear myself and trying to fit in a little bit, but I realized that the less I cared and the more I just did what I wanted with my art, the more I liked it for myself. And sometimes in school, you have to like play that game between what will I do for a grade and what will I do for
yeah,
myself.
yeah,
And part of the reason I wanted to go to grad school because I knew I can do everything for myself.
yeah. Well, I mean, how do you think this time that we live in now plays into that? Because I always say, only because I've been able to see the span of a few years. I'm really pre-computer, so I can say before the computer was kind of really mainstream. But now, how do you see, or how do you see it for creators and talk to younger creators now of this time that we live in with all these outlets for monetizing your own work and getting your own work out there?
I'm proud of my industry. Like they got radicalized. The workers got fed up with studios. Like I knew people who worked for the same studio, big ones, for about over 10 years, and they fired them and then rehired them as a freelancer, take away their health insurance. And like there's if someone treats you like that after 10 plus years of good work, you have no reason to return to it. And now artists are being less loyal to those big studios and they're finding alternatives. I love looking at a Kickstarter for independent pilot. Like,
Yeah.
I love seeing people's web comics. I love it when people have a Patreon and I could throw in my little bit of money. Like I always try to throw in money for independently published comic books because the
Yeah.
comic industry is also just as messed up. Gaming is messed up. I love indie games. And I think the more artists are empowered to be independent from big studios, the more we're going to have higher quality of art because it's not going to be the same old heads confining people to like the same types of storylines that they think will make money.
Yeah.
And I'm also means that maybe some big blockbusters won't be as good for a few years until they kind of go back to putting artists in charge and getting away from the executive money making model.
Yeah.
But even with Ryan Coogler's Sinners, which is an independent film, really shows that the audience also wants unique
Yeah.
stories, independent stuff,
Oh
not
yeah.
so much
Yeah.
sequels.
Well, which, like I said, and you can let me know what your thought of is. I thought, like I said, the Oscar win for Flow just kind of really said it all as far as just a different thing that, a small independent kind of creator was able to reach that pinnacle really said a lot. And it was a different style, didn't have any audio. Like I said, what did that kind of win as far as animation kind of say to you when they won the Oscar?
There's like this petty side that remembers my professor banning cat films in undergrad, saying that everyone wants to do a story about their cat that's not interesting. That's those stories would get you nowhere. So seeing Flo win an Oscar just feels so good. Like, see now.
Oh man. So I'm sure your professor is saying, "Oh, God, I guess they do love cat movies and stuff."
Like I feel like this it really goes to show that people really should just make what they love.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see the passion in Flow. You can see the passion in Sinners. You can see the passion even in big studio films like Turning Red. You
Yeah.
can see that when the creator behind it
Yeah.
not stifled, you can get a really uniquely beautiful story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want more artists to feel that freedom that they can be a little weird and unique. There she goes. I'm moving her a little fuzzy.
She just rolled across.
That when more artists are empowered to
man.
just be their weird selves, we get
Yeah.
better art.
Well, and I think that's what I love about being just the creative process. Like I said, it just so happens I kind of love animation and comics and things like that. But, stop motion, you got Leica out there doing stop motion stuff, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. You're seeing all kinds of just creative stuff and styles. I think, like I said, it just comes down to is the story an interesting story that people can relate to, and you wrap it around whatever medium you want to choose to try or you think fits, the story that you're trying to tell. And I think that's what I love about seeing all these this time that we're seeing all these creative people. Now they have tools such as, Unreal and Blender that are free that they can get their hands on and just unleash their creative, ideas. And they have all these channels, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Kickstarter, if they want to really take it any further, to get their idea out there. That's why I'm so excited, about this time as a creative, even though it's going through its rough period, I think it's kind of awake. Yeah, but I think it's awakening the entrepreneur, independent creator that's now sees that, okay, I can go straight to my audience and make even more money if I really want to.
And I think the audience is really rewarding it. Like Digital Circus, indie, doing great. Big Top Burger, love it. All Blender, beautiful style.
Yeah.
and we're getting. I had one in my head and I just like flew out. But
Yeah.
it's still like the indie creators are starting to make their work and the audience is responding to it. I remember when Tiny Chef recently got canceled, people stormed to it to defend it because
Yeah.
it was on a big platform that and it wasn't marketed to the audience that wants to see it. But now people are following it on TikTok and now they're getting that level of popularity. And now Tiny Chef is probably going to go back towards that social media platform that they started on. But
Yeah.
that isn't always necessarily a bad thing because you get creative control and your audience is there's no middleman between you and your audience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I said, I think a lot of artists are waking up to that. Okay, we got creative control. Now we can, and not have to sacrifice on their idea, or have to change it for anything, type of thing. If that's the case, they don't want to. Now we got these creative controls, and I can just, I can make a web series if I really want to, and just go straight to YouTube and probably get bigger. Like I said, be a Mr. Beast. You won't want it. You won't need to go to the big studios.
On that same page, there's like the accountability the artists are going to need to. It's
Yeah.
like if you don't have an editor or someone looking at what you're making, what you put out is something you have to also 100% own and also face consequences for too, which isn't a bad thing. I think
Yeah.
more artists do need to be aware of the ramifications, repercussions, and social impact of their art. That's part of the reason I want to get my second master's in art education to do research on that. But if I want people to have creative control, but I also want people to use that control with responsibility and have accountability, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you feel like they are or they aren't at this point in time taking a lot of accountability, especially with AI and what's going on with that and things like that? Do you feel like we're kind of losing kind of a little accountability?
I think it's a mixed bag. I know there was a while when um, years ago, it feels like art Twitter would have like people complain about cancel culture when it's
Yeah.
really just people pointing out stereotypes in art. Or there were times when big artists can have something dug up from their own art and they would say, well, they don't have to talk about it because it's that old. Um, I do think that people who hide behind AI are facing accountability because it looks cheap, it looks fake. It looks like
Let's
someone
AI.
who didn't
Yeah.
put the time to do it. And I think also artists now have so many tutorials on like how to like color dark skin characters, how to properly represent trans characters, how to draw different body shapes and all that. That accountability is really on you because there's so many tools now just to make box sprays with a brush, digital brush.
Yeah.
And I think that if the tools are out there to teach you, then an artist needs to be responsible for it. And an artist who doesn't want to take the time to improve their art because it's easier to do it the AI way or the stereotypical way, then they have to own that they
Yeah.
took the easy way out and didn't care about the harm in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you definitely as an artist have to own your work for sure. Mr. or Miss LinkedIn user, your name doesn't show up, and I'm not. Let me hop over to LinkedIn, and I'm not sure who commented, but we appreciate you. I'm trying to, kind of manage all of this. I don't have a producer that's doing the
Maybe the
show. Paul Allen, appreciate that, Mr. Paul. Appreciate you tuning in for sure. Louis, I'm always amazed with Taylor's work every time. And like I said, we're going to take a quick look after this of work before we jump back into it for sure. Mr. Dewan, I haven't seen Flow yet. I haven't seen it all the way through either. I caught like half of it. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to see the whole thing. But appreciate the underdog story behind it's. I don't even know what it's a. Well, I guess it's exactly what it's about. But including the facts that made me made from a free program like Blender. I think that's what's getting a lot of people
Yeah.
is just how he made it and the fact that it wasn't a large team. And obviously, he said that was the first time he ever worked with anybody anyway. So it was the first time he collaborated with anybody. It was just a great movie. I think it's a real testament to a movie that doesn't have audio, doesn't have a word of audio. It still, conveys and tells a story and captivates people for over an hour. That says a lot.
Yeah, I think honestly, I kind of miss when films didn't have dialogue or you had to read the text because like the acting, like I guess we still have that type of acting in theater nowadays. But I feel like what makes animation so fun is that you can do the over big posing acting, and
Yeah,
I love it when um, films embrace that no dialogue, traditional
yeah.
acting type of work.
I've heard a lot of animators even say, "Hey, even if you have audio, that's it's going to have audio. Do your animations without audio so you can kind of get really focus in on the movement of it, and really see whether or not it works. Listen to it without audio. Listen to it with audio. You'll kind of
Mm.
pick up on stuff.
I
That's what I
do
hear.
think audio is half the film, but it doesn't always have to be dialogue. It can be like the sound design, the music, like
Yeah,
how things swell with it. And I think that a lot of animators do benefit from understanding sound design, but also a lot of them also benefit from knowing acting, like
yeah,
taking acting classes, improv
yeah.
classes,
Or
theater.
improv. Yeah, I hear that a lot as well. They recommend taking like improv. Animators do so. But again, for you, what did you feel? What did you feel like when you were going to school? And you were saying that most schools, most instructors are trying to get you kind of into that being a kind of a cog in a wheel, type of thing position. Do you feel like they were trying to gear you towards a certain position in
Yeah.
animation?
Well, I don't think they had much in mind for a position for me. If but I think one of my first assignments I did for a character design class, I drew a black boy with his cap backwards and in a hoodie,
Mm-hmm.
who was upset his teacher gave him 1 point off on his math test, not because the math problems were wrong, but because he spelled his I with a lowercase I. His name Ian with lowercase I,
Yeah.
and he said like you can't mark me down from 100% over my over the way I spelled my name, right? And when I went into my professor's office hours, one of the first things they said is the kid doesn't look smart.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, what does smart look like to you? And they're like, well, get rid of the backwards cap, get rid of the hoodie, and put them in glasses and like a button up, right? And I'm like, I don't think I need to pull away a character's blackness to make them look smart, which is like the same criticism people have for Mr. Terrific now in Superman. Like he speaks in AABE, and people are like, he doesn't sound like a genius. I'm like, do you see the robots he built? Like, and same thing
Oh
with Ryan
man.
Coogler. He doesn't. I'm gonna keep mentioning Ryan Coogler because he doesn't code switch when he does interviews, but he's a cinematic genius, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was kind of the gist of it, that I had to go back to like old and tried stereotypes and shortcuts for characters and storyboarding and storytelling in order to make things easier. But I don't want to be that person to say if a black kid is smart they have to look a certain
Certain
way.
way.
A black kid in a hoodie and a baseball cap is
Yeah.
just as smart as any other kid in that class, if not smarter.
And I think that, like I said, that's kind of you know putting us all in one kind of diaspora, and we all looking like. I mean, we're coming and look in so many different ways. It's like you said, they're geniuses. Kids of color that are geniuses that, like you said, wear hoodies, and you would know. Getting them out of that kind of, this is the way we think it should look, which is why, like I said, I love this time because now, creators aren't locked into somebody else's vision,
Mhm.
and they can put their own vision of what they want out there, and really show. Uh, Mr. Louis got a lot to say. Wow, yeah. Six. Let me see.
Sound effects.
Sound effects. Yep. Sound effects is very important. And that's an interesting thing. You ever seen like Foley artists do their job? That's really
Yes.
fun to watch Foley artists and how they put sounds together. Um, and
I always struggled with Foley in class because I didn't realize how much I lacked rhythm until you're trying to hit the footsteps on beat to the camera, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh wow, I'm really messing up here.
Or just coming up. You have to really love. Like I said, I do a little. And I tell people I'm not a videographer. I'm not a video editor. I kind of like getting in and messing around. Video editing my own stuff. I wouldn't consider myself a professional by any means, but it is interesting watching or when you see like a actual even a 30-minute commercial when you see the movie track or the editing track and you see all those tracks of just layers and layers of sound that they add on to things to just and it could be as subtle as something that you don't necessarily hear, but it's just your ear picks it up. You have to really love sound to really be good at layer. And I got a much better appreciation. As I've started doing video more for my job, I've gotten a much better appreciation for just directors, actors, editors, people that put the stuff together because it's a lot of work. It really is.
Yeah, Pro Tools, I can never crack it. When I was in school, I was always working with a sound designer when I can because I'm like, this program intimidates me every single day.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like I said, it's interesting. I think what was it? They said somewhere the sound that Alfred Hitchcock used for the shower scene was
Yeah.
him stabbing a cantaloupe. It was him stabbing into a cantaloupe, or like the sound they use for breaking bones are like celery that they crack the celery. So it's just interesting where they get sounds from, how they really mix and match just everyday sounds and puts it together. So the filmmaking process is really fun. Do you find, like I said, is that something for you, teaching kids and just teaching people about that they weren't aware of going in or just didn't really get the all that is involved? I find that a lot of people just are so used to seeing the end result that they aren't aware of just all the steps that are involved in putting something like that together, whether it be a film or animation or whatnot.
Oh yeah, my students, all of them, most of them really did not like the editing process when it comes to podcasting. So they would love to record, but then you have to like listen through and like, oh, I don't like how this sounds. Like you got to be recorded. You got to cut out the breaths. You got to cut out the pauses. But then you've always find the student who's like unique and they're like, this is my favorite part. I'll edit people's podcasts all day. And I
Yeah.
had this one student who had like a great voice for sound, and he learned that if he made this sound with his mouth a certain way, and he like added reverb and some echo to it, he can make it sound like a gunshot.
Mm,
And I'm like,
yeah.
so he like learned how to make sound effects, and he like made dinosaurs and footsteps, all with different things. And so he spent the entire classes doing Foley.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is you never know what a kid's hidden ability will be in something until you give them the tools to try it. And I'm like, wow, you
Yeah.
guys featured Foley artists right here.
Yeah. Yeah. He's gonna be and like I said, if he's the type that he sounds like that really geeks out on it, he's gonna be a real demand, like as just doing stuff because, like I said, it takes a person that really has an ear for sound to just, wow, I can mix this or like you said, add a reverb to this and get a totally different sound type of thing. But it's a skill in and of itself. Tyler, hey Taylor, Tyler's here.
We went to grad school together. I used to say with TNT because people always call him Taylor and people always call me Tyler. So it was just like, hey,
TNT, I like it.
switch.
I agree about Pro Tools. The
User interface.
user UI is insane. My eyes are bad. I gotta make these larger for sure. The UI is insane to navigate. That that's definitely the thing that keeps a lot of people user interface. It turned me off of Blender for a long time. Turned a lot of people off of Blender for a long
I
time.
still
The
find
user
like
interface. But I am learning Blender. I do love Blender now, and that's what I'm the tool, my 3D tool that I'm using for sure. I like um, DaVinci for editing. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Resolve for editing and coloring. But like I said, it's just one little part of it. You get to see, like I said, with DaVinci, you get to see the whole thing. Like color, that's a whole nother, just color grading something is a whole nother thing in and of itself. Um,
I love TV Paint for the same reason because you can just hand animate on there and you can plug in the sound. It can kind of be a little rough and lazy, and sometimes I do my sound in like After Effects, just my scratch sound because I
yeah,
really can't. Pro Tools is my enemy.
well, like so I'm not a would use Final Cut at the job, and I don't really like Final Cut, but I use it, and, because it's what we use on the job. But some tools you just, they're just your tool of choice that you like using. And we're going to take a quick look at some of Taylor's work. Let me jump over here.
Oh, into my cover my eyes.
Now, this is like I said, she's
No.
since been, moved on to different styles and doing different things for sure. But definitely, like I said, it gives you a sense of her style. And I think as you do stuff, you find. Do you think it took you a while to kind of find just your kind of style?
I'm still finding it. I feel like your art style, it grows with you. So like, I hope my style keeps changing for the rest of my life.
So where do you think what we're looking at? Where would you say your style is, or how would you describe your style to somebody looking at this right here?
Um, right now, because I've been doing summer camps, and comic diaries, it's like very much like um cartoony. I've been going up. I finally got into the circular eyes. I was like resisting it for so long because I'd like circle eyes are lazy, and I don't know where I even got that opinion from. And then I started doing it, and I'm like, wow, I actually love eyes like this. I see why other cartoonists do it. And since
Mm.
I've been making coloring sheets, I've been learning how to make cars recently, and they look really cute for me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
And I always say like I'm in that macabre cartoon style where it's like it looks cute, but you just know something bad is going to happen.
Yeah.
like you feel a touch of horror in there.
So would you say before and I want to take a look at some of your cutouts that you showed me earlier, but would you say that's kind of your style, like as far as animation, that kind of adult animation or animation creative like for kids? Where would you say your style kind of fits in as far as the demographic of who it's talking to?
I loved the series of misunfortunate events when I was growing up, and I really think in Goosebumps, and I think we're kind of missing that really good middle school horror.
Mm,
And I work with middle schoolers, and they
yeah,
love
yeah.
horror. The stuff they show me on the phone, I'm like, I don't think you should be playing that game. Um,
Yeah, but
so
it's
yeah, I
pretty
guess
probably,
I
it's
hold up
probably
a
more
few of my
intense
things.
than
I
what
really
I'm
want to
used
go
to.
into like that. Something that's cute for middle schoolers. A lot of the symbolism
Yeah,
in it. Something that is approachable for children, but also you can see that there's like a little bit of darkness, maybe even like sadness in it
yeah,
as well. Because I feel like one thing I appreciate about Goosebumps, series of unfortunate events, and even Courage the Cowardly Dog, it shows children how to deal with bad events, how to
mm,
deal with fear and sadness. And I think that it's really hard being a kid. Kids are scared, kids are
yeah,
sad, kids have concerns, and teaching children how to deal with scary situations and how to be safe, I think, is one of the most important things you can do in
yeah.
art. The main writing I'm doing is planning out middle school horror stories and how I'm going to help kids deal with bad adults in scary situations.
Yeah. And I think those are the ones we usually tend to find to do best, the ones that don't talk down to kids. I think that's why Sesame Street was so successful. They didn't really talk down to kids, and when real life happened, they actually put it in and talked about it and explained it and I guess that's why Mr. Rogers. They really talk down. I think when you talk to kids in the straight way, because they understand what you're doing, and whether you think they do or don't, they really do pick up on the little nuances. Those are the ones that really do well.
And Mr. Rogers was so radical, having like the first black guest on those cartoons. It was the military man, and to protest segregated pools, he put his feet and the black man's feet in a kiddie pool together. And Sesame Street, same way, they gave Elmo a thick Baltimore accent, right? And Elmo is exactly how sassy a 5-year-old is, right? Like that's the correct amount of sass a 5-year-old has. So and even now with Bluey, I think shows that even as an adult you can be charmed by or even feel healed from, because you're like, I kind of wish I had that as a child. Are some of the most important medias, because it goes across multiple generations. Because I watch Bluey with my students and I'm crying and they're like, why are you crying, miss? I'm like, you're too young to know why I'm crying.
No reason at all. Just watch the show. Oh man, but no, those ones that, like I said, I think when it hits, when the story connects, it connects. I mean, it connects at any age, and I think anybody, it resonates with anybody. Shayna, I want to make this undergrad.
You survived.
I always feels so nostalgic to me. It kind of gives me that. They used to. They don't sell too much of them anymore, but those like little cutouts that you could pull out of a book that had like those little clothes that you could stick on to them. I forget what they call them. If anybody can remember.
I'm going to do that with my dolls soon. I cannot express that I did all of these dolls in 2 weeks. So I'm really excited to keep doing it so I can make even better versions of it, because I want it to feel like something kids can play with.
Yeah. No. It's funny. Like I said, when you think of the toys today versus the toys, now, definitely different. But other stuff, like I said, I think now, especially with this time that we're in, mixed reality, there's this great opportunity to really reach kids in a lot of different ways, both physical and, virtual now. That's why, like I said, I love this time that we're in. We're able to see a lot of different creators come up with a lot of interesting ways of not only entertaining, but educating, reaching out, and really connecting people in a more meaningful way.
And I appreciate it too, because it was so funny, because I had a student for this week in camp who was upset that they have to learn over the summer. And by the end of it, they were coding their own basketball game from this program called Scratch 3. So it's really good because it has like little bits of like cut out digital puppets that you can program, and it does coding blocks that you would use for robots. So it's like adding that little engineering and robotics with a little bit of that artistic style. And they were just could not get off of it. And I saw that they had a notebook. And I'm like, oh, do you know I draw? And they're like, okay, miss. I'm like, you want to see? And so I whipped out this coloring sheet, because I copied their coloring sheets. And he's like, you drew an octopus like that? And I'm like, yeah, I drew this octopus. And he's like, I want to learn how to draw this. Let's see if I can draw this on my own. And he just spent another part of the class is trying to see if he can learn how to draw an octopus, right? And it went from being mad he was here to saying he's going to miss me next week. And I'm like, I'm going to miss you too. but it's like, kids want the opportunity to do fun stuff. They want the opportunity me to learn how to make games and comics. They
Yeah.
love my stickers and they love squishy toys. I give
Yeah.
them fidget toys and squishy toys as prizes. All of them want toys, actually,
Yeah.
and they don't get them anymore.
Yeah. And the beauty of it is you don't know what idea that sparks within them. You may show them something and it may spark, wow, I wonder if I could use it for this. And they come up with something totally different. I think that's the joy for any teachers when they see the student gets it. It really picks up and starts to run with what they've shown them on their own.
Yeah, I fully expected to make full comic book video games by the end of the month. Like
Yeah, oh
they learn the
man.
program so much faster than I can teach it to them.
So to this point, what would you say has been your biggest learning lesson? I mean, you've kind of you're balancing this creative edge with this kind of technical educational edge. What's been the biggest lesson that you've learned to this point that's really kind of helped you?
Honestly, it's kind of hard to realize how much you can be disconnected from children, even when you're making art for children, until you start working with them again.
Yeah.
Um, when I was in undergrad, I knew I wanted to make a cartoon from kids, even grad school. But it wasn't until I started working at the museum, I'm like, hey, I want to approach this differently. And now that I'm out of grad school, I've been working with kids as my main job and took a step back from freelancing.
Yeah.
I actually got more creative than ever. I feel like my art's improved so much faster by having that 9 to 5 with kids, by
Yeah.
doing after school programs and summer camp and basketball coaching and all those things, because there's and kids are the most creative, chaotic,
Yeah.
interesting people.
Unfiltered. If you
Yeah,
like I said, just unfettered. They're like raw clay before life starts putting thumbprints on them. They
and
just
they
mold.
like middle schoolers are the most entertaining people ever. So I and so I'm like I was like stuck on what I want to do and just working for the last year, just listening to their podcasts. I already have like a whole idea of all these stories I want to write, things I want
Yeah.
to do. And I give credit to my students that y'all make me better artists. And I'm happy to know that they want to do art even just for themselves and try to paint and try to draw and try to record and do music because they see an adult who's happy to see them do it, just the
Yeah.
way an adult was happy to see I was taking math classes and robotics.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And like I said, I think that's all any child and kid needs is somebody to see, an example. And they're going to get an example, whether it's a good example or a bad example. They're going to see some kind of example. So, which example do you want to put in front of them are the things. And I think if you give them that, just show them that there's an opportunity. They'll run with it and have somebody encouraging. Who who would you say was that encouraging one for you that really kind of helped, like I said, lift you up when you were down or had
I,
those doubts?
I want to try to say this without crying. My dad, he passed away last November,
Oh
but he
wow.
was always the one who would tell me that that if God gives you a talent, it's your duty to pursue it. And he was like a military guy, so he says it in a
Yeah.
strict way, but that's his way of saying that I see that you love art and you can pursue it. And when I was having my first hard time, because like I had to close my studio license and business license because it just wasn't working out freelancing, and I ended up working in AmeriCorps in the middle of like Northern California, and I was really struggling with those hours. It was my dad I would call before and after work. It was my dad who I called when I got my podcasting job, and I was telling him about my students.
Yeah.
And knowing that my dad can feel the happiness I felt being able to do art again, and my happiness I felt to do students, and him to say like that's exactly where you need to be. You need to be an artist. You need to be a teacher. Always made me feel okay with the choices I made as an adult, because when you're like the kid that they label you as gifted in 5th grade, it's kind of burdensome. because
Yeah.
they expect you to make something. And then they'll have teachers I had that would say, like, do you know how few black girls we have that actually like math? If you don't do engineering, then you're just doing a disservice to your community. Like, that's, I know they mean it, they think that's helping, but it's actually a
Yeah.
harmful thing to say to me.
Yeah.
But it was always my dad telling me, you can drop all of this junk and just draw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that I did drop all of it and I'm still drawing and I'm still teaching, it makes me feel like I'm still being true to myself, to at least true to the version of myself that my dad saw in me when I was younger. And that
Yeah.
makes me feel good too, because that's healing in a way. And even though he's gone, I still feel healed and accomplished, that I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. And I know that my dad is happy to know that I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
Oh man, yeah, and you all know how I have to do that. I have to drop a bomb on something as priceless as that. No, it's I'm a big proponent of you gotta have somebody that's at least one person that's an advocate for you, that really encourages you. You know, whether it's a teacher, counselor, your parent, whoever, you need somebody that's gonna, you know, push you towards that, like you say, your true self, you know. And I think everybody has that. You know, I was in it. You know, I was in, you know, I wasn't in like those kind of classes like you, but you know, I was in accelerated classes, calculus and algebra and all that kind of stuff, and I couldn't tell you any of that now. But just feeling like I said, the burden of you have to go down a certain route. You know, it's always good to have. But I had a counselor who she saw my talent and she saw I loved to draw. So every time I went to go see her, she had a long list of schools and scholarships that hey, here, this is where you need to be doing and applying for, and just pushing. So it's always good to have somebody, you know, that's there for you, that sees, you know, what makes you happy and that what you're good at. And obviously you have a great passion and love for educating and teaching, you know, the next generation, you know, these creative outlets. What are some of the things that you're hoping to kind of do moving forward outside of teaching, just personal projects that, you know, and ideas of things that you're wanting to kind of, you know, put energy into moving forward?
Well, art is first of all my therapy. So I do like a visual comic. That's why a lot of people, when they look at my sketchbook, it's just doodles of my day, because it's like I always want to journal, but I realize that journaling through cartoons helps me
Yeah,
actually unpack my feelings.
yeah.
And honestly, I, not exaggeration, visual diaries has kept me alive. And so I want to continue that healing journey of reflection and portraits in my art to see who I am. I want to really engage in research and curriculum. So yeah, I'm starting my master's in art education, my next master's, so I can research, hey, like, why child development classes maybe should be part of art classes if you're going to make art for children. What can be some early propaganda that's in children's art that we may have overlooked? What can be potential influences on communities if, like, we keep lightening characters' skin tones every time we reboot a series, like stuff like that. I want there
Yeah.
to be actual, like, more curriculum and art around it from people who respect the medium of art, but also wants the best for the outcomes of children and adults. And I also really just want to produce my own work. Um, I've been working on this project since 2021, 2020. And it just gets longer and longer. I think the Google Doc I have for it is about 20 pages and it's still like an
Holy
outline.
wow.
So I can see myself working on this project for 10, 15 years. Just by the time I get through all the stories I want to go through. And
Mhm.
that's exciting to know that once I actually start drawing it out and start publishing it myself, whether it's a comic book, a game, whatever medium I want to go, I have all these years of myself I put into it, and all these stories and influences that's been making it grow and making it feel whole.
Mhm.
Oda is actually a big inspiration for this because my students love One Piece. Like, they love it down, right? And one thing I know about Oda is that he wrote the entirety of One Piece out, and he has it. So even if he dies, like the manga can finish without him. And I
Mm,
like the idea of having a series written out completely and knowing exactly where the characters you created are going to end up, and making sure everything in between is bringing them into that solid end story. But in between that, they have all these misadventures. That's like 1,000 episodes now, right? And my students love Luffy because they see themselves in them and they see the misadventures, and they love to see them grow, and they're going to grow up with that. They've grown up with the anime and are going to continue to grow up with it until they're at my age and older, right?
yeah, yeah,
And I would love the ability to write a story that can basically raise a generation and show them what the different lifestyles and changes that they're going through developmentally, and have a story that is showing a character going through the same stuff and showing it's hard, like
yeah,
it's really hard
yeah,
growing up and seeing what it means to be like from elementary to adulthood. This is what scary stuff looks like.
yeah, yeah. No, like I said, which I'm trying to get better at myself at writing, like story writing and script writing. Like I said, it takes a lot to craft a story for sure. Um, let's see if we got some more comments in here. Shayna, yes, children are as intelligent, and I love when animation reflects that. Yeah, like I said, that's the beauty of it. There's and like I said, not just animation. There are so many different styles and flavors. Your art always feels so nostalgic to me. I think I put that up. Let's see, Mr. Dewan, articulated cutouts are cool. Yeah, like I said, that's why, you know, again, I love creatives because, don't know, they just have ideas
You can kick.
and you just make it. And you never know, there's going to be somebody that likes it. You'll find your audience for it for sure. Mr. Louis, it's beautiful to hear that children are motivated to do artistry because they're shown that they can. Like I said, I think you just show them and they'll pick it up. If it's something that they enjoy doing, I remember, like I said, when I went to school, like during the summer, they had like a arts and crafts teacher that would come to the school, and whoever just showed up, we did crafts for the day, whether it was crocheting those pots, pot type of things, or drawing or something. They had some kind of activity for the kids to do. And I think, like I said, as long as you give a child access to activities, they'll come up with something and they'll start to, it'll show them, the possibility of what they can do. So I'm a big encourager and proponent of, all the creators and artists and friends that I've had on going into schools and I'm hoping to do more of that myself. Just give kids access because I know how powerful that would have been for me, seeing that as a kid, somebody coming into class and talking about, wow, you can really be a cartoonist instead of figuring it out and trying to just, find out on my own that was what I
Yeah.
wanted to do,
And I love coming up with new crafts with my students because they get easily bored. So you always have to come up with something new. We've gone through paper mache,
yeah,
cardboard structures. We went through 10 pounds of clay already. Um,
yeah,
balloon structures. It's definitely, I end up making my first paper doll just because I had to come up with a craft and like, let me just do paper puppets with these kids. And like, wait, this is actually really fun. So
yeah. Yeah, like I said, you'll come up. You give kids just the access to do stuff, they'll come up with all kinds. They'll
right.
come up with all kinds of stuff. You can sit and make a show just about them, for sure. Wow, wow, wow! We are coming past an hour. Like I said, it always goes by so quick. Like I said, these episodes. Definitely, this has been a fun conversation for sure. And definitely, like I said, make sure that you connect with Taylor. You can find her on all her social platforms. Go to her website. You know, she connect with her on LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. Check out, like I said, this what I showed you is just some of her early style work. She's definitely, as you can see with the cutouts, expanding and moving into different territory. Like I said, I think that's what I love about being creative. There's just things that you want to do. Like I have like a lot of my, I don't know if you can see them over here, but I have a lot of my old toys, like G.I. Joe toys, and I want to try some stop motion stuff with them. And I've seen a lot of like really cool. There's a guy I'm trying to get on DM. If you're watching this, I still want to get you on. He does some cool stop motion. Yeah, he does some insane stop motion like stuff. You got to see it on LinkedIn. But I'm trying to get him on the show. But love stuff like that. That's why I love just creatives, because you don't know how they'll use stuff or what they'll come up with. You know, we wouldn't have thought Into the Spider-Verse that style would have hit until you've seen it, and it's a great story. So I'm always excited with the tools that we have now in the hands of true creatives, what creatives will come up with. It could be something that's, you know, simple as claymation, you know, but if it's really done well, it's really cool. Make sure, like I said, all this stuff will be in the show notes on the YouTube channel. So make sure you hop on over there and connect with her. Like I said, definitely, like I said, I never get through all my questions. I rarely get through.
Oh no!
Even, I rarely do get through a third of the questions because the conversation is just free flow. But it does give me the opportunity to have Taylor back on. So now, like I said, that you're a Color of Motion alum, you're always welcome on the show anytime, any place, whenever you're working, whatever you want to come on and show what you're working on next. Definitely come on. We definitely need to do something. And I probably want to get with you to talk with you and maybe bring one of your students on. That would be really cool with you, you know, kind of thing. See if we could do something like that.
Yeah, at the community center, because I'm hosting a podcast day for the city of Lancaster in a couple of weeks. So I'm pretty sure the community center would love to like have a bunch of kids.
Tie in the Color of Motion. Yeah, tie in the Color of Motion. We're going to talk about that. Kind of see how we can tie in the Color of Motion some kind of way with what you're doing. I know, hopefully everybody has enjoyed this. We've had a good turnout. Like I said, man, almost 20 people.
I was harassing people.
That's good. I always encourage all my guests that come on, promote your show. You should be having your community come on. I can only reach so much. I don't know whether this is Miss Unique. I would assume Miss Unique rather than Mr. Unique.
That's Unique. He's a boy.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry.
They actually teach at the college now.
Yes, bring Taylor back. Definitely. She is coming back on for sure. Like I said, now that she is part of the Color of Motion family, she's always welcome back on the show. But this has been, like I said, an amazingly fun way to kick off, like I said, the back half of season 5. This is going to be a fun one. Taylor, thank you so much for coming on and gracing us with your presence. If you could hang out in the green room while I close out the show, I'd appreciate it. So I could talk to you afterwards really quick. But everybody, again, please help me thank my special guest and friend, Taylor Goethe, for coming on. So much love. So much love. Hang out for a second there, Taylor. Hang out while I close this out here. Oh, mama, this has been a great show to kick off. Man, this was a great show to kick off. The second half, like I said, she had an amazing turnout. 20 people. Wow, that's got to be a record. For sure. Mr. Unique, I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody that tunes in. I appreciate all my viewers for coming and tuning in, making this the best show. And if you believe it or not, I was actually nervous coming back. I'm always nervous coming back from a hiatus. but quickly get back into the flow of it. And definitely Taylor helped with that, making it such a fun episode for sure. Louis, appreciate you for tuning in. Make sure that you stop back in next week for sure. Yes. Like I said, I appreciate all my guests for tuning in. Mr. Dewan, definitely give Taylor a follow. Her draftsmanship has a great sense of appeal. Yeah, she definitely has a fun style for sure. Like I said, she likes experimenting in different things, and I think that's a testament of a great creative. You know, they don't get stuck in one thing. They like letting their art evolve. So, like I said, this has been a great episode to kick off this second half. I'm expecting next week to be no less than that. And I am super excited about next week's guest for sure. One of our very own coming back on, Mr. Andre Rodriguez. He was my second guest ever on The Color of Motion. Coming back on, Mr. Andre Rodriguez, and we're going to dive into his film project that he's working on, Double Smooth, a little animation where he talks about his time in prison. So it's going to be an amazing episode. Like I said, super looking forward to my man Dre coming back on and chopping it up with us again. Andre Rodriguez next week, writer, director, and animator coming in, and we're gonna have a fun conversation. You definitely don't want to miss this for sure. Like I said, thank you for making this episode a great episode, a fun one for sure. Cannot wait to see you. Make sure that you have a great weekend. Have a great rest of your week. Have a productive week. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Cheers, everybody.